Hello, everyone. I'm your storyteller, and tonight I'll be sharing a chilling tale that might make you think twice about that dating app on your phone. I will read a story that maybe one of you has experienced, and I am here to help you today. I know you're using this video to help you sleep, so before we begin, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you're from and what time you're watching. Lay back comfortably, relax, and let's begin. Story 1. Julia swiped through her phone, staring out the window of her small apartment. Rain poured heavily outside, droplets echoing against the cold city walls. It had been 3 months since her long-term relationship ended. The loneliness was palpable, as real as the rain pattering against the glass. At 28, Julia was a project manager in tech, successful but always busy. Work had become her refuge from the emptiness, but nights like this felt hollow. One evening, under the dim light of her apartment, she downloaded a dating app. Why not try something new? She thought, setting up her profile. A candid photo of her laughing became her display picture. Her bio was short and simple. Lover of coffee, sunsets, and mystery books. Don't hesitate to say hi. She swiped left and right, pausing occasionally to read a profile. Everything seemed ordinary until she saw Ethan's profile. Ethan, 32, had a soft smile in his picture and a magnetic presence. His bio was brief. Looking for a genuine connection, lover of hiking and art. Julia felt a strange pull. She swiped right, and almost instantly, it was a match. Ethan's first message was thoughtful and personal. Coffee or mystery books? If you had to pick one forever, which would it be? Julia smiled and replied. Their conversation flowed easily. Ethan was charming, confident, and attentive, as though he knew exactly how to keep her intrigued. But something felt odd. Ethan seemed to know little details about Julia she hadn't shared. When she mentioned a cafe she liked, Ethan said, "Ah, the one near the city park? Perfect spot for reading." Julia hesitated. She hadn't mentioned the location, but she brushed it off. Maybe he just guessed, she thought. A week later, Ethan suggested meeting in a popular cafe downtown. Julia chose a casual dress, applying light makeup to look effortlessly natural. When she arrived, Ethan was already waiting at a corner table. His smile was exactly like in his photos. "Julia, right?" he said warmly. Their conversation flowed smoothly, but Julia couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. Ethan seemed to know too much. He mentioned her favorite colleague by name, even though Julia had never told him about her work. "You must have told me about them before," Ethan said with a casual laugh when she questioned it. Still, something in Ethan's eyes made her feel watched, like he was observing her more closely than anyone ever had. After the meeting, Julia's unease grew. She decided to dig into Ethan's digital presence. To her surprise, there was almost nothing. His social media accounts felt hollow, like they'd been created for show. She stopped replying to his messages, but Ethan's text became insistent. "You can't avoid me, Julia." That night, she heard a knock on her apartment door. Peeking through the peephole, there was no one there. Then her phone buzzed. A new message from Ethan. "You'll never be alone again." Shaken, Julia kept searching online and stumbled upon a chilling news article from 2015. It detailed a man named Ethan who had gone missing while hiking. Weeks later, his body was found at the bottom of a remote canyon. Julia's blood ran cold. How could this be possible? The Ethan she met couldn't be the same person. Could he? Her phone buzzed again. A voice message from Ethan. Trembling, she played it. The voice was distant, a whisper. "You chose me. Now we're together forever." The lights in her apartment flickered and went out. In the darkness, she heard slow, deliberate footsteps approaching her. Story 2. Adam had been through a tough year. A breakup, the death of his mother, and the loss of a job left him craving a fresh start. When he found a small, affordable apartment on the outskirts of Boston, it felt like a lifeline. The building was old, with creaky wooden floors and tall windows that let in just enough light to make the place feel cozy. His apartment was on the top floor, isolated from the others, perfect for someone who wanted to be alone. Finally, some peace, he thought as he unpacked his boxes. But the peace didn't last long. The first few nights were uneventful. Adam spent his time setting up furniture and making the place feel like home. But by the third night, he began noticing oddities. At first, it was subtle, the feeling of being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see someone behind him, but the room was always empty. Then the noises started. A faint tapping sound came from the walls late at night. It wasn't the rhythmic knocking of pipes or the creak of settling wood. It was deliberate, like fingers drumming. Adam told himself it was just an old building. One night, as he lay in bed, he heard something new. Whispers, low, indistinct murmurs, as if someone was standing just outside his bedroom door. He shot out of bed and opened the door, heart pounding. The hallway was empty. By the end of the week, Adam was on edge. He started sleeping with the light on, but it didn't help. One night, as he scrolled on his phone in bed, he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. His breath caught as he turned his head. A shadow lingered in the corner of his room. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but when he blinked, it didn't disappear. It was tall, unnaturally thin, and motionless. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The shadow didn't respond. It didn't move. It just stood there. Adam grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. The corner lit up, but there was nothing there. When he turned the flashlight off, the shadow was back. Adam confided in his neighbor, Mrs. Keating, a woman in her 70s who had lived in the building for decades. "You're in apartment 4C?" she asked, her face growing pale. Adam nodded. Her hands trembled as she sipped her tea. "There's something wrong with that place. Everyone who's lived there left within months." "What are you talking about?" Adam asked. Mrs. Keating leaned in closer. "Years ago, a man named Michael lived there. Quiet, kept to himself, but he started hearing things, seeing shadows. One night, he was found dead in the apartment. They said it was a heart attack, but..." She trailed off, shaking her head. Adam felt a chill run down his spine. That night, as he lay in bed, the whispers returned, closer this time. Then came a voice, clear and low. "You need to leave." Adam decided to stay up all night with every light in the apartment turned on. He sat in the living room clutching a baseball bat, determined to face whatever was tormenting him. At 3:14 a.m., the lights flickered. The room plunged into darkness. Adam felt the air grow heavy, as if the apartment itself was holding its breath. Then he saw it, the shadow standing in the doorway. This time it moved. It didn't walk or glide. It shifted, like smoke twisting into a shape. Adam's chest tightened as the shadow loomed closer. "Why are you doing this to me?" he shouted, his voice cracking. The shadow stopped inches from his face. Its form seemed to ripple, and for the first time Adam saw two faintly glowing eyes. "You were warned," the shadow whispered. Suddenly the lights flickered back on. The shadow was gone. The next morning, Adam packed his belongings. He didn't bother to call the landlord or wait for his lease to end. By noon, he was gone. He moved to a new apartment across town and tried to forget what had happened. But every now and then, as he drifted off to sleep, he swore he could hear whispers in the distance and see a shadow lingering in the corner. Story 3. Olivia had always believed in love. At 27, she was a romantic at heart, clinging to the hope that someone out there was destined for her. After countless failed relationships, she found herself venturing into the unfamiliar world of online dating. One evening, after a particularly draining day at work, she downloaded Lover's Lane, a popular dating app. She swiped through dozens of profiles, each face blurring into the next, until one caught her eye. His name was Michael. His bio read, "A hopeless romantic seeking someone to share quiet evenings and endless conversations." Michael's smile radiated warmth, and his deep blue eyes seemed to pierce through the screen. Olivia hesitated for a moment, then swiped right. Almost immediately, a notification popped up. "It's a match." Their conversation began effortlessly. Michael was attentive, witty, and seemed to understand Olivia in a way no one else had. Within days, they were messaging nonstop, sharing their dreams, fears, and secrets. But Michael was different. His responses were always perfectly timed, his words carefully chosen. It was almost too perfect. After 2 weeks of talking, Michael suggested meeting in person. Olivia, nervous but excited, agreed. They chose a small, cozy cafe in the city center. The moment Olivia saw him, it felt like déjà vu. Michael's presence was both comforting and unsettling, as though she had known him for years. "You look even more beautiful in person," Michael said, his voice smooth and warm. They talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. Michael seemed to know things about Olivia she hadn't mentioned. "When you were a child, you used to draw houses with red roofs, didn't you?" he asked casually. Olivia froze. How do you know that?" Michael chuckled softly. "You mentioned it in one of our chats, remember?" Olivia nodded, but deep down she knew she hadn't. As their relationship deepened, Olivia began receiving love letters at her apartment. Each was handwritten in delicate script, sealed with red wax. The letters were poetic and deeply personal, describing memories Olivia couldn't recall. One mentioned a trip to the countryside where they had picnicked by a river. Confused, Olivia confronted Michael. "These letters, they're beautiful, but we've never done any of this. How do you know about these things?" Michael's face darkened for a moment before softening. "Sometimes love feels like it spans lifetimes, doesn't it? Maybe we're just reconnecting after being apart. His answer was cryptic, but Olivia didn't press further. One evening, Olivia decided to search through her late grandmother's belongings, which she had stored in her attic. Among the dusty boxes, she found a stack of old photographs and letters. Her heart stopped when she saw one of the photos. It was dated 1947, and in it stood a young man who looked exactly like Michael. Terrified, she flipped through the letters in the box. They were addressed to her grandmother, from someone named Michael. The handwriting matched the letters she had been receiving. The next time Olivia saw Michael, she couldn't hide her fear. She held the old photograph up to him. "This is you, isn't it? From 1947. How is this possible?" Michael's expression didn't change. He took a deep breath and said, "Olivia, you and we've been connected for longer than you can imagine. I've loved you in every life we've lived, and I'll love you in every life to come." "No," Olivia whispered, stepping back. "This is insane. You can't be alive." Michael smiled sadly. "I'm not, but I couldn't stay away from you. Not even death could keep me from finding you again." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face, his words echoing in her mind. When she woke, the letters were gone. So were the photographs. The only trace of Michael was his name, carved delicately into her bedroom mirror. She moved out of her apartment, deleted her dating app, and tried to start over. But late at night, she could still feel his presence, watching, waiting. And sometimes, when the wind whispered through her window, she swore she heard his voice. "I'll always find you, my love.